Hello and welcome to this session. So we are starting a new module. Now we'll look into the AI agent. So what is an AI agent, right? So until now, what we are actually did is like we have an user input. So you have an user input here, right? And then we would do a AI calls, which is we'll do an LLM call, and then we get a response, correct? So this is what we did, right? So we had prompts, we would call the AI, and we would get the response. So this is very useful, right? So we have done many projects as well. Now to take it a little bit forward, right? So with modern AI systems, so they are becoming much more advanced. So instead of just one request or one response, now we build systems that can think in steps, that can make decisions, that can use tools, right? So like for example, if you have an AI agent that can query your database, right? So they can plan tasks, they can remember the context, they can coordinate with the workflows. So all this can be done. So all these systems, the systems or what we call as an AI agent, right? So this is what we call an AI agent. Okay. So I'm just saying in a very simple step, right? In simple terms. Okay. Now this is one of the most important things because everywhere you will actually hear about AI agents, right? So now this particular module is very important for us because the rest of the course is actually built around agents. Now we have come into the more advanced topics. Now we have warmed up with creating a lot of prompts. We warmed up creating, making a lot of LLM calls and in everything. Okay. But now we are getting into the business end, right? So we're talking about agents. Okay. So now many people or beginners might actually think like, hey, the let's say you have a chatbot, right? So that chatbot is basically an agent. Okay, chatbot is an agent. So this is actually wrong. Okay, chatbot is not an agent, right? A normal chatbot, what it does is it usually receives the input, right? And basically it outputs a response, okay, generates a response, and that's where it stops. But if you're talking about agent, it goes beyond this. So what it can do here in agent, like for example, if you're talking about agents, so what it can do is like the user will give you a goal. So user will give a goal, gives a goal, right? And then agent would think about this. Okay, this is a task I need you to do. Agent would think, and then agent would plan, okay, what I need to do in order to achieve this task. So agent would plan the task. Agent may use tools, like for example, if your task involves the use of like acquiring a database, so agent will query the database, then it will evaluate the response. So agent will look at the response and say evaluate it. So in all our previous projects, right, what we did is like we evaluated the response. We, in the sense, the user evaluated the response, but you can have the agent evaluate the response as well. So agent will look at the response and it evaluate it, and then it can continue the working. Or what it can do is it can hand off. It can say like, hey, my work is done, and then the agent might hand off this work to the user or to another agent. Okay, so see, this is something like normally how a developer or you know how your normal human being does, right? And then finally it can do a final output. So these are all the things that an agent can do, right? So these are very much advanced. So they are like almost like how a human being will think, right? So now if I have to give an example, for example, like what an agent can do. So let's say if I have an agent and I basically tell the agent, hey, book me the cheapest flight, okay, for next weekend, right? So I'll say, I'll give a task, like the task is to book the flight, and it's the cheapest flight, not just the flight, the cheapest flight. So what agent would do, right? So there are multiple tasks that agent would do. So first is the agent would basically search for the flights, right? So now we, for this task to take place, the agent might use a web search. There are different tools on it, and again we'll see all of that in our project. Now once the agent searches the flights, then the what agent would also look is they agent will compare the prices. Now agent will also check the timings, right? It will check the timings of the flights. Okay. Then what it can do is like it will evaluate all the options, what options are good, and based on that it might ask for clarification. Okay, it said, hey, you know what, uh, I this is a flight here at this time, are you okay with this? Based on that, again, depends upon how you code it and how you make the agent, and finally it can basically book it for you. Okay, so you don't have to touch it, your agent will do all these things, right? So it's not just in a prompt where LLM will do it. So previously what we did is we basically have prompts, it will call the LLM, we get the response. But here what we are doing is in agents, it is actually completing a task, it creating action, like it is searching flights, it is booking the flights for you, it's doing a lot of things. So this is where it is a game changer, right? It is basically doing things like you would ask a human being to do. So this is very advanced one. So again, we'll see this agent in action as well. Okay, now one of the things that we also have to understand is like when, and might be an interview question, it's a good interview question. So probably they'll ask like, hey, what does an agent constitute, or what are the core components of an agent, right? So this is an interview question that can come up. So we need also understand what are the core components of an AI agent, right? So one is obviously the LLM, large language model, because for reasoning, for decision making and everything, we need to call the LLM, right? So we cannot get away with that. So LLM is one of the components. Then we have memory to, if you want to store the context, if you want to store the history or some tools, we can use a memory. This is an integral part. Tools is another integral part. So let's say if an agent wants to do some external actions, like in our previous example where it has to search the flights, right? So which means it is basically going to use a tool to do the web search. Again, we'll talk about tools much detail when we actually do the projects and everything. But this is one of the things which is there. Obviously we talked about planning, right? So we plan and decide like which workflow steps, like you have a large goals into breaking into smaller tasks. And orchestration, so orchestration is another thing, like control the execution of the flow, like this flow will come first, then it's the other flow. All these things are basically the compound. So a good interview question, to be honest. All right, so now let's look at another example. Okay, so we talked about workflow, right? And we did the workflow as well, right? So how is another interview question could be like, hey, how is agent different from a workflow? Okay, so what does workflow do? It basically has a predefined step of execution. So it will say like, hey, once you have step one executed, go to step two. Once you have step two executed, now go to step three. This is an example of our workflow. Now agent will dynamically make the decision. So what an agent will do is it will basically analyze the situation, and then it will choose the next action. So there is no predefined step, or they can be, but you can actually make it dynamic where you say like based on your analysis you choose the next action, and then based on it you basically adapt dynamically, right? So these are basically how, so it's dynamically thinking and taking the decisions, right? So these are like very much reliable or much flexible, right? Okay, so this is how the agents and workflow differs. Okay, all right. One last thing that I also wanted to talk about is agent frameworks. Okay, now again, this is an important thing. So for we have a separate module to cover all of this. So this is more like just an FYI. So in later in this course, we will actually learn some of the frameworks, agent frameworks. So basically frameworks in the sense like somebody would have already written a piece of code which you are using it regularly, like how do you call an LM and everything, and they've wrapped up in some function, and each company is actually having their own framework. So we'll see all of that. So what we are going to see is we're going to see open AI frameworks, open AI SDK. We'll see Crew AI. This is one of my favorite, and we have an exciting project in this Crew AI. We are actually going to create one full software engineering team. Okay, so LandGraph is another one, AutoGen. We have MCP, so great frameworks here. This framework help us to build structured AI systems, agent system, multi-agent systems, right? So it's not just one AI or one agent. We'll have multiple agents, and the agents will talk to each other. They will do the planning. They will hand over things. So a lot of exciting things are there. Okay, so we'll see all of that. Okay. Cool. So I know this is a little bit longer. We covered a lot of interesting things. So I hope this is helpful, and you are able to understand properly, right? So we talked a lot about this agents, workflows, core components, and obviously some examples of how agents work. So if I hope this is not confusing, but uh, for some reason, if you're not able to understand, that is still okay. Like when you start working on the projects, you will actually be able to relate to everything that we talked about here. So this is more of a theory, but we have ton of exciting projects, ton of advanced projects, so where we'll actually start working with the AI agents, and not just one AI agents. We'll work with multiple AI agents, so you will see how advanced these are. Okay, so I'm all excited for this, and I'll see you guys in my next class.